Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey,
It's me, Daniel,
and this is Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten.
Oh, that shelf.
Boom. We are revisiting. This
Revisiting and comparing. It's
yeah.
a high compare and contrast. This is an ambitious episode, I feel.
Yeah,
and-
we're looking at both Justice Leagues, the one
Mhm.
that was done by Whedon and the one that was done by Snyder.
Yeah. The Snyder cut versus the theatrical cut versus what is technically still, I guess, still the official canon of it all. I guess it's a situation where they're just let's forget about that, but whatever. I don't know what the
I
actual
don't know.
situation is right now.
No,
We'll let them figure it out. All we're interested right now is comparing the two.
Right. I mean, I didn't, when I was watching it this time, I didn't really change my tune. I believe that obviously the one done by Whedon isn't good, and that the one done by Snyder is better, but I don't really think is great either.
So here's my question to you: which one did you watch first?
I watched them in the order they came out.
Okay, so you did it the same way I did. So, because to me, I knew this would have changed something. However, the change in my mind would have been: would it make me appreciate the Snyder Cut more or less? And that's what I'm hoping to look at in this conversation.
Well, how did you feel?
Well, I mean, in many ways, it's there's so many things for me to take into consideration. The idea that not that it would have mattered, but Snyder had the ability to take fan response into consideration. Had his own timeline, different kind of expectations, higher higher to some, lower to others. We don't know, but he had more just content for us to explore, and in his own convoluted way got to tell a cohesive story through that runtime.
I agree. I think that the theatrical cut, you could watch it and be like, oh, like this feels like it got noted to death, and then you learn yes it did, and there was a very cynical, like, well, let's get it out before the end of the year so everyone gets their bonuses. Let's keep it under a certain time so that people can keep watching it in theaters.
Yeah.
So it is the ultimate, like, made by committee, even down to, like, it says it's a Zack Snyder film, but we know that it was mostly a Joss Whedon film. So yeah, that is for sure. And it doesn't really, like, it does feel like just a bunch of stuff happening realistically versus the Snyder cut, which does feel, I'll give you that, it does feel like an actual story. I don't think it's a good story, and I think it's pretty much the same story that was trying to be told in the theatrical cut. It's just, as you said, he got to add a bunch more stuff in, which I don't know that activity actually leads to quality.
But like we've established through multiple reviews of Snyder's films, he's just a convoluted guy. And in this convoluted nature, he's never been given the runtime to actually explore a narrative. And in this, he actually, you're right, quality has not gotten better, but the message has gotten clearer. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. You know what I mean?
I don't know if the message got clear. What I know is that other than Sucker Punch, which is like his movie, his story,
full original stuff. That was his only one, right?
He adapts things, which is perfectly fine, like
completely fine.
But I think we've seen that, say for a couple of cases, he doesn't really understand what he's at, or he doesn't I shouldn't say he doesn't understand. His take on the adaptation doesn't really line up with the spirit of the original text. I'll say that.
Yes. And
I,
I think what's important to clarify there is not through the fans' interpretation, but it seems to us that it doesn't align with the creator's vision
hmm,
of what that character is supposed to be. And that's what's our problem. Or that's what's my view of it, anyways. Like, to me, this is not the Batman. This is not the Superman. This is not whatever.
yeah, I think it's Grant Morrison that writes them as gods,
Yes.
which this Snyder cut is very clearly dealing with a bunch of gods. The
Mhm.
problem is that like if you do that, then no one is the audience surrogate.
Mhm.
Like yeah, and I think it just puts me at a distance to what's happening because
Mhm.
it's a lot to watch. And as I said the first time we talked about the Snyder cut, it's mostly a 3.5 hour movie, and then the last half hour and a bit is just like cut scenes. Like it's like you got to
Mhm.
watch the DVD bonus features just packed into it. So
Mhm.
that for me definitely makes it lose steam. But this second time watching it, at least I was like, honestly, by the time they get to Russia in this movie,
Mhm.
I at least feel like the energy kicks up. Like it is more fun than the Whedon or the theatrical version where
Mhm.
they get to Russia and you're like, ugh, I don't care about this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's things in this cut that you're right with the god perception of everything like that, and every character's perception that we're looking at is a godlike character. We have no attachment to the humanity that they're actually trying to save. But and then the issue is in the Whedon cut, they try to bring us down to the humanity with the family there that everyone hates, and everyone's just like this slows down everything. The narratives, like we get why it's there, but
Mhm.
the
It's bad.
criticisms are always like we spend too much time with them, or they are not connected in a way that we care
It
about. Like
makes
it's
it
not like,
seem like
oh,
they're
this is
the
an
only
origin
ones
story for
there,
another character. Exactly. It's
which
like
isn't the case. Like when you watch the movie, you realize that, like it's a whole city, but so it's weird to just focus on that one family
mhm,
like the way they do. But
yeah,
I think the Whedon cut is trying to make it more human through other things. I don't think any of it is
yes,
stuff people like. Like the whole brunch run is supposed to like human. Like
mhm,
I do think it's like trying to give him a beat of like, oh, like yeah, he's just an outsider. Um I should say Flash, like Barry Allen. It's just this outsider that
I
needs to
see what you
be,
mean. What he's trying to understand brunch in front of
yeah,
Bruce is
or even the fact that he says humans have this rhythm that I haven't figured out yet. Like,
right. Like they're too slow or what? Like well, the
yeah,
rhythm. Yeah.
I know that realistically that does make him seem more like a god that doesn't understand, but he's not this all powerful god that just doesn't care.
Mhm,
It's that he wants to connect, so
mhm.
that makes him feel more human than uh on the whole how the characters feel in the
Yeah,
Snyder movie.
yeah.
Um,
It's very much like the Doctor Manhattan kind of Silk Spectre 2 situation that you have in another Snyder film, Watchmen, where it's like, okay, you have someone that's processing things so fast, and it's not their fault because they've been given this ability, but it distances them from the people that they love or they're supposed to love and all this kind of stuff. So they have to find connection through godlike characters. You're right. Like the Flash is probably the best connection to humanity that we have. And in the Snyder cut, I feel like that connection in that humanity is a lot better. It's just that the fight to me has no connection to that humanity. It's weird because everything he's doing is like, yeah, that's what humans would do. Because Bruce, if we're relying on Bruce to be that character of like, this is what humans would do, it's just like, okay, well, we can't all buy our way out of everything. So I guess that's just connecting to a small subsection of the population. But like, the Flash is the more human um thing, and Cyborg as well, obviously.
mhm.
But Cyborg being in a sense where it's just like, yeah, again, we can't help that you're processing information at a rate that we can't even perceive. And that disconnection from humanity. It's these same tropes and different characters. It's Snyder's kind of stamp. How do I make these action figures do these things that I've done? before.
Agreed. Yeah, they are used more like action figures. So yeah, I think that's kind of my thing. Is just I didn't really feel like, oh, this is a good movie. Like the Snyder Cut is a good movie. Like there's things I think work better in the Whedon cut, which I brought up. Like the connection between Batman and the Flash works a bit better, especially when he's saying like things like "just save one." I feel like that works better.
I totally agree with you on that. Watching it this time around, knowing that that's one of the biggest changes is like that was significantly better in the Whedon one, because it's, although it is more upbeat Batman, Snyder's Batman is arguably more upbeat.
No, Snyder's Batman is more upbeat. I don't actually think that the Whedon.
You don't think it's arguable? Okay, fair enough.
I don't think it's. So like he has lines like "Hope, Alfred." Well, what else would we have? Like
you're right. And then Faith, 100% and then just we've Faith, never Hope. Fought us together, or like whatever, like all that kind of. You're right. Upbeat. He is more upbeat. He's just more upbeat within a darker movie. So it's just like okay, or tonally, anyways.
Because that's what I was gonna say. In the Whedon one, he's actually at odds with the League. Like he causes a fight.
Oh yeah.
Which to me is more interesting. Is that he's like, no, we need Superman, and then he like talks shit to Diana, and is like he's trying something. Like he is a Batman that actually has a plan, and he's not letting everyone else in. Like he's basically on a like suicide mission, but he is trying to put together the people that will take over healing the world when he's gone. Like he has already like. That was my main complaint about the Snyder Cut, is that they removed all of Batman as a tactician, as a thinker out of it. Like in that, and I'm not saying it makes it a better movie, but in the Whedon run, at least Batman, like you can track that he's like, I'm putting this together because I'm going to be gone. And then by the end of the movie, he feels like, no, I should stay. But like he is setting it out, like after he fights with Diana, like Alfred's like, why are you pushing her so much? And he's like she needs to be the leader. Like she needs to like get better. Like or the fact that he's like, I already planned to have Lois there so that if Superman goes off the rails, he can connect to his humanity through Lois. Like all of that's gone in the Snyder Cut.
You're absolutely right. The Snyder Cut completely removes the big guns, as he puts it, and you know, in the Whedon cut, that is smart. You want to laugh at it, but it is smart because it connects with his humanity and all that kind of stuff.
But it's also connecting stuff that Snyder set up.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He's doing a better job at putting the period at the end of the sentence. But I mean, we said, Snyder's never a guy that's good at finishing sentences. Very, very like he's not a concrete, like direct guy. He's just like, here's many ways to get around something without actually saying it. You're absolutely right. Like Whedon did a better job in that regard, but like Batman's just not a tactician here. You're just like, what are you doing? It seems like, okay, you found these guys, we're told that your plan is to put this together, but in that you're not knowing what you're putting this team together for, and then Diana updates you the entire time. It's like, yeah, we're doing this like now, we got to do it right now,
or the fact that he like stole the idea of her gauntlets. Like it was a weird beat to put in. Like I get it, gives Wonder Woman a chance to be funny, which I appreciated, but it was like the one time that they're talking about him like having a plan, which is using his gauntlets to be able to deflect things. It's like a very clear like, and Alfred even like stupid is like, it was Master Wayne's idea, and she's like, yeah, maybe he should get a whip too. Like that makes you tell that, like it's like, he saw that on Wonder Woman and decided, oh, I'm gonna just do that. It's like less of somebody who's like actually studying and like trying to figure out multiple ways. It was just the one thing. He's like, yeah, I guess I'll just use gauntlets.
Yeah, because it makes it seem like, because in the Whedon cut, it is very clear that he's someone orchestrating a plan for the team. He's like the team captain. He's doing everything. In this one, he's just clearly playing defense, and it's because he's like that move is like, oh yeah, the gauntlet armlet thing. It's basically to defend himself. He doesn't make that for anyone else in the squad. It's not like, oh yeah, here we're Barry Allen, we're gonna upgrade your armor, so you don't get shot, which would have been crucial for it. He doesn't do that. He just
that was also himself. A thing that wasn't the point I was trying to make, but yeah, I know what you mean. But that was to tack on to the point you're making. That was something that I read early on is that like Batman was going to give Barry a new suit. Like there would have been an aspect of him upgrading people throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Which isn't in either one of them, but in
Mhm.
at least in the Whedon one, it's not a factor. Like there's no plot point where Barry gets hit and you're like, oh, like it would have been good if he had the upgraded armor.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, no, the point I was making more was that I didn't understand. I don't know who he likes, like as a character, Zack Snyder.
Are you
He
talking about
certainly,
Snyder? Yeah.
yeah, like he certainly doesn't like Superman.
Mm.
Like
No, he doesn't.
I don't know why you would tie your hands like that. Like the next movie I do is going to be Justice League without Superman. And yes, I get like, why wouldn't you want to enjoy Superman throughout your movie? But
Mhm.
like, and
But
I'm
I
not
do-
even a Superman fan,
yeah.
but it's like I don't understand. Like it does make it feel less special when you don't even have like the marquee character as part
Yeah.
of the team in earnest. Like he is just someone that comes in and saves the day at the end.
Yeah, because it just looks like Superman. It looks like Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, in the
Yeah.
sense where it's like, hey, we need to get the E Street Band is nothing without Bruce Springsteen, and it's very clear because the whole conflict is set up by the fact it's like, oh yeah, the mother boxes. I like that in Snyder. They're like very logically explained, even though that scene does like slow things down. It very logically explains like why didn't the mother boxes were here the entire time, but they were afraid of Superman, and now that he's gone, they called Steppenwolf. I'm like, that's very logical. That makes sense to me, and why this is all set up, and why they need to, and justifies why they need to bring Superman back in that regard. Like it's a better argument in that scene, versus the Whedon one. They're like Diana is just like, no, we can't, and then just back and forth, right?
I like that
But-
better. I actually don't like the Snyder one where they're like, oh yeah, let's just do it. Like I
Right.
like that people have different perspectives. It
No,
makes them it makes them easier to like
Yeah.
identify and actually feel something for.
I agree. That's a scene where I'm like, I don't know which one I like because I like the fact that the Snyder one lays out the logic a lot better. But then the Whedon one is like, no, it shows you conflict and how they seek that resolution through that, even though Wonder Woman doesn't actually agree with it. She's just like, no, I'm just here because you guys need me in case backup. Like, I don't want to
No,
be here.
I just
You're
like
doing
that
it.
better.
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's
I agree. I like that better. It's more realistic and it's more dynamic and it's more conflict within the team, which is realistic. But
yeah.
what I don't like is the fact that they take Superman out. You're entirely right. But the whole point of the movie is that they need Superman back, and it's just like it's a weird thing.
Yeah. No, the
not really
point I was
Justice
trying to
League.
make was that like I don't know who he likes because he sidelines Wonder Woman. Like I get it. He's like, yeah, she's a god. Like that's
Yeah.
the easiest one for him to slot in as the muscle.
Mm.
And she can do some exposition. Like, but with the Batman, I'm just like, yeah, like he doesn't really. He makes him look bad like throughout the movie multiple
Yes.
times. Like the only reason he was able to recruit Barry is because Barry already just wanted to be a part of something. Like, or
Yeah.
when he goes to Aquaman and he just pulls out a wad of money, and I'm like, what? Like, that's not Batman to me.
No,
He
it's
like
not.
he literally will just throw money at problems.
Well, I mean,
And then
that's Bruce
Superman is
Wayne,
sidelined.
but sure.
No, but that's not Bruce Wayne. Like most times you see him, it's people saying, "Why don't you
Mhm.
just use your money to help people?"
Yeah.
Instead of him being like, "No, I'm going to just build myself up and fight
Yeah.
crime."
Sure.
So he's not really someone that he throws money at the gadgets he's going to like use to fight crime. But even in Dark Knight Rises, it's like, dude, you can be saving like these orphanages and stuff with your money.
Yeah, they were. Even Alfred says the world needs Bruce Wayne, not Batman.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right about that. You know what? Exploring that question, I think it's very, very interesting. I think Snyder sees himself rewatching it this time, and we got to make sure we balance the opinions between the two, and not just do a Snyder Cut 2.0
Mhm.
for episode. But I think he sees himself as Cyborg. I genuinely do, and I think like
Maybe.
that.
I
that
don't
to
understand why
me-
people think that Cyborg is so well thought out in this movie.
Okay, it's not.
He's
that
got a lot
well
of
thought
screen
out.
time. I'm
He
just
has
like,
a
I
lot
don't.
of screen time.
I
And
just
that's why
don't know,
think
like
it's Snyder. I think I think Cyborg.
I think he
is
likes Ray
Snyder.
Fisher. I don't think he thinks he's Cyborg.
I think he does. In from okay, from a hear me out. From a convoluted way, he's like trying to portray Cyborg with most time, which is what Snyder needs to make a point across. And he's showing Cyborg in a way of like, I interpret all this data. I function everything on a higher level, and I see in the future as well as in the back. So I feel like it's Snyder's way of being like, look how difficult it is being a director, like directing this movie, but also the next movie, in terms of narrative, where you want the movie, where you want the characters to go in that kind of sense. I feel like he's trying to make a case for like how difficult his job was at the time, and is exploring that angle from that perspective too. I actually think he sees himself as Cyborg more than any other character in the Justice League.
Yeah,
That's how I think.
I don't see it, but
But
yeah.
I mean, I think that's what he's trying to say, but I don't think he says it very, very well, and I don't think he makes the case very well to me. But I think that's what he's trying to do, like connect
I
with any
do
other
think
character.
that he's good at saying what he wants to say. I don't think that what he has to say is usually that well thought out, but I think I think I do think that Snyder is very clear on his views of in life, and that's why I don't think he sees himself as Cyborg. I think he sees himself as like an apex, like alpha person. I don't like but you can take into account like basically any time you've seen him like at like a press thing or interacting with audiences, he doesn't see himself as the guy toiling in the background at all. He's not like, I think he took care with Cyborg because he and it came out during everything it was actually Ray Fisher that put a lot of stuff into that wasn't a lot of Zach.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like that was a lot of Ray Fisher being able to bring stuff to his character. That was Zach trusting his actor that he brought in. But even in what you're saying, the role of direction is still put on Batman in this movie. They they want Cyborg to do more of that, but they even put him at a place where like Aquaman says like, oh, why are we bothering this guy? Like we just got his dad killed, and like I don't even think he's like fit to do this. That could I mean, again, who knows what was in the movie before his daughter died, but I don't think stuff like that was reshot.
Right.
So it seems like that was always like some actor he liked. I don't know again about if he likes the character or what.
Okay, that's fair. Okay,
because all of it is still Batman. Like that is, it's like we're operating out of his cave where like it is his plans. Like he says, let's bring back Superman. They're gonna bring back Superman. He says we're gonna go here. They're going there. Like it's all related through Batman. Like that's the person pushing things. And
right.
Machinations on how things should play out.
Right. Well, I mean, the only other logical exploration of that question is that he sees himself in every single character, and he's just exploring different aspects of his personality through different characters, embellished or not. And I can live with that, which makes a lot of sense in the sense where,
I mean, yeah, that's different than who he likes. You can still
correct
narcissistically put yourself through every character, like filter yourself through every character.
You're right. Yeah.
That's part of filmmaking. I get that. What I'm saying is, who does he actually like? Who
like the most?
Yeah, like there's just certain things you can tell. Like when Sam Raimi is doing his movies, like you know he loves Doc Ock. You know he loves the Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Fucking Goblin. Sorry,
Green Goblin. Yeah.
He loves those people. He loved Sandman. You could, like those are things you can tell watching the movie. And yes, obviously he put himself. He is Peter Parker in these movies, but you can tell who he actually likes and who he's excited about.
Yep.
Through I don't see that in this movie. I don't see who he's excited about. Whereas at least with Whedon, like it seems like he is kind of excited about Superman, like the post credit stuff. Like he's just, or even starting the movie with Superman and giving him the thing that again people don't like, but at least for me, it's like book ending the movie. You're kind of like set up with this is the hope that was in the world, and then it went away, and now we're happy he's back.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just weird that all of a sudden, from like every interaction of Superman that we've barely seen him smile, and then we got to see this jarring
yeah,
mustache
no,
removed image.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Like, yeah,
I can see his need to be like, the last time we saw the world, they hated Superman. Like, it's
mhm,
important to show. And if you look at the date, it is before the action of
yes,
Batman versus Superman.
mhm.
So like, it was showing you like there were people that looked up to Superman and liked him.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
yeah, and so I think that's important. Other than starting with his death,
Mhm,
and then, as you said, it does really set up well. Like, his cries, like, kind of
mhm.
were the bell that was rung that um Lex Luthor was talking about,
Yeah,
that started all of this. So I do think, yes, in terms of both movies do a good job of setting things up in the first scene for their movies. For me, though, where the both movies end in terms of this hopeful thing and having Superman back, I do think the Whedon beginning makes more sense to me of at least showing you a moment that people actually liked him and then connecting that back to the end, because
mhm,
both movies are so leaning into like this vacuum Superman has left,
yeah,
and it's more leaning into the sign of hope that people lost
mhm,
when he was gone.
yeah. To me, the Whedon cut was way more interested in exploring the hole that Superman left in society versus and the need for Superman society to also save society. But to me, the Whedon cut was more about the Justice League's need for Superman
You mean
to
Snyder
defend
cut,
to
right?
the Snyder cut. Sorry, you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
The Snyder cut. The Justice League's need for Superman to fulfill
The
their
win.
mission, which
Yeah.
is to save humanity and all that kind of stuff. So it achieving similar goals ish through storytelling, but like ultimately the same thing. But in the sense where the Snyder cut is just like, I'm not interested in seeing what their humanity's connection is with Superman. I think, and with these characters, and I think at one point there is someone that wrote Zack Snyder hates humanity, and because like every single
Well,
movie,
that is his
it's
whole
him.
thing, right? Like his Ayn
Yeah,
Rand, like Fountainhead style. Like,
mhm,
that's that's his shit. I think people, and I think that means there's a lot of politics that goes into people who like Snyder, and then he'll
yes,
upset them by saying, "No, I vote Democrat." But
yep,
like, um,
yeah,
yeah, there is definitely that aspect of his lack of interest in telling human stories in that sense.
yeah,
But that's the problem. Like, you do 4 hours, it's diminishing returns at a certain point, because
hmm
you're there is aspects of humanity, obviously, like Barry Allen with his dad, Barry Allen with
hmm
Iris.
hmm
Um, Alfred brings a bit of humanity, but like,
yeah.
we don't need 4 hours to have those moments.
You get little,
Yeah,
very
because
little
they
from
aren't the
Aquaman.
focus.
Yeah,
Those moments aren't the focus of the movie. He's
exactly.
using it to just be like, yeah, yeah, like that's a nice bit. That's a nice
Yeah,
movie.
they're using it more to be like, okay, I can fit a little bit of humanity in with this character point and all that kind of stuff versus like in the Whedon stuff, like no, this is just purely about humanity because we that scene with Superman that we're referencing in the beginning, the cell phone footage thing,
Mm-hmm.
that is purely about humanity because it's not anything but Superman in the sense where that's
Well, it's
prime
about his
Superman.
humanity.
Yes,
Like, they ask him, "What's your favorite thing?" And even though you don't get an answer, you
yeah,
see a genuine smile on his face.
he
And
has an
I know
answer for
people
sure.
have thought like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, he's thinking about Lois or whatever," but the idea
Mm-hmm.
is still, he gave you a moment that you don't get to see in any other Snyder version of Superman,
Mm-hmm.
which is Superman thinking about Earth and being happy.
Yes,
Every other time you see him, he's upset that
he's
he's saving people in Mexico.
yeah.
He's upset that he's like, so that's why I'm saying it made more sense to me that it's like, I've never even seen a reason why people would like him other than
Mm-hmm.
he saves the day, but he also brings a lot of destruction with that.
Yep.
So it was nice to see a moment with these kids who didn't feel afraid of him or angry at him, being like, "Oh,
Yeah.
like, can we talk to you?" And then again, seeing his almost like wave of calm go over him as he thought about Earth and what he
Mhm.
likes about it.
Mhm. Yeah, that was a very nice human moment. But like I said, it's nothing new about Superman. It's new about how humanity actually sees it. Because
What is
from
new about
both,
Superman? Because the movie before that was, why should I even help them? Is this even worth it? Then the
right,
next
but
movie was,
because
oh, I don't even think about that anymore because Batman's trying to kill me. So it
right,
was new for this actual version of Superman.
yes, but it's newer to the audience because it's the first movie was like, here's Superman and here's what he did, and he did one thing, and then the second movie is literally the reaction video to the first movie, and then the reaction video is like, okay, well, we're trying to decide whether or not we like Superman, and then in that we're dealing with a director that has not decided whether or not he likes Superman, and then we're dealing with a situation where we're dealing with the primary narrative who the audience much more wants to prefer to explore, which is Batman. It's like, oh, let's check out Batman because it's Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. It was like more, everyone was like, let's do more Batman stuff. So everyone was more distracted with Batman than the Superman aspect, despite the fact that it was a co-headliner movie. And then we're dealing with a situation where Superman's dead. And so we're trying to decide whether or not we like Superman. And we don't have a Superman to like anymore. But here's the first time the audience is like, no, we liked Superman. And that's new to us, right? Like for the
That's not what I'm
humanity
saying.
side. Right. That's
Yeah,
not what you're
that's not,
saying?
no.
Okay.
What I'm talking
I'm missing
about
it then.
is less a meta thing about how the audience or the filmmakers feel and more character based. What do the characters actually feel?
Mm.
So if you're tracking Man of Steel,
Yeah.
it is, I have these powers. I've got two father figures telling me what to do with them.
True.
How do I use these? Because basically this world is so shitty to me.
Yeah.
And basically he comes down to, yeah, I will save them, but you still don't get a sense of whether or not like he likes them, but he will save them. Batman versus Superman is just like doubling down on people shitting on him in the form of, here's another superhero and he's trying to kill me. So what I'm saying is, what is new and what is discovered is there is something, you can see that there is a genuine love for this world from Superman. He's no longer conflicted on whether or not he likes Earth. That's what I'm talking about. And that is important because that plays into him coming back. It plays into him coming back, being confused, and I don't think that scene works really well in either of them, but
you're right,
for different reasons. But he comes back, and then the idea that Lois and his mom kind of ground him again, you can connect that to what he thought about when he was like, what do you like best about Earth? You can, but it's giving you something to tie it to other than just, I mean, I guess it's time for him to go save the day again.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's important, and I do think it's new, and that is why that scene, to me, bad CGI aside, was a good idea.
Glad you said that. It was one of the most distracting things ever. Okay, very, very fair. It's hard for me to look objectively at that scene because of the CGI and because I'm already so exhausted with the Superman storytelling that they've told already. And I'm like, this is just, and then getting through the Whedon cut is just grueling. But you said something in that I do like what you said. The confused Superman bit that they do. Neither one does a good job. Which one does a better job?
I don't like either one of them.
But
I think
of the two, which one does a better job? Because we have to, this is the point of the podcast. We have to compare one.
I just think it's a bad scene. I wish it wasn't in the movie.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
but since it's there, we got to look at it. I mean, personally,
I mean, you can tell if you like it.
Fair enough. I personally, I feel like the Whedon cut does a just really bad job. It just like, especially with the callback of like the "tell me, do you bleed" thing before he fully comes back. To me, I'm just like, so wait. You're telling us this is a Superman that has his memories and that has callbacks to stuff.
Well, he doesn't have any memories because why would he be mad at Batman? His last like hours of life were working with Batman and being friends.
Correct. In which case, I'm just like, or you could tell me, okay, we're in uncharted territory there of necromancy, so we don't know exactly how much dementia exists in necromancy. It could be argued that it's like, oh, they're bringing the cells back, and the newer, like the older cells, like wake up earlier than the newer ones, which is why you're able to walk and talk and motor movements and don't have to learn that again, or you know what I mean. They could argue that physiology all they want. It's just, to me, it's less consistent because you're having now a Superman that has selective memory and what his actions are. And you're right, the last few hours of Superman's life, they were working together and, at least not justifying an attack right away. The only thing that would have justified would have been Cyborg's thing. But at the same time, it's Superman. He would have been like, deflect. Hey, I'm not, I remember you guys now. We're cool. But then to throw in like, do you bleed? It's weird.
Yeah,
and
no,
a weird
bad.
delivery. It was bad. It's a weird delivery too. Every time I hear that from Superman, I'm like, oh my God, that's the take you chose to go with? It's a
I mean, I don't,
delivery,
as I said, I
feel.
think both of them are bad for different reasons. If you're talking about why they start fighting, the cyborg thing makes sense. It's
Yes.
they're saying specifically, oh, he's reading us and you're giving off bad vibes. That's why he's going to tense up. And then
Yep.
Cyborg takes a shot. If you're saying that he doesn't know who anyone is, I still don't know why he would actively try to fight them so much as just be reckless and they have to like tamp him down.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense. That neither one of them makes sense to me, but at least in the Whedon version, it's like, dude, stop it. You're making him upset. And he doesn't know who Cyborg is. So he could at least try to fight Cyborg. I wish it never happened. But what I'm saying is it would make more sense to me if he just flew off and was being crazy and they had to like figure out a way to stop that. The fact that he's actively fighting them makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, because especially when, I forget which cut does this, or maybe they both do, I can't remember, but there's a scene in one of them where you get it from Superman's perspective, like a close-up of Henry Cavill's face, and you get it from his perspective, and you hear like all the things you hear from Man of Steel when he was a kid and he was going crazy in the closet, like all the noises, everything processing. So you're right. That alone, from a guy that just got raised from the dead, all this kind of stuff, would be enough to get like, and then one that's flying in the air and all that kind of stuff would be enough to like fly into buildings and like have the light distraction and all that kind of stuff. You're absolutely right. That would have been way better for them, the league, to figure out how do we control this, because they didn't even think about like, okay, well, we're going to raise him from the dead, but he might need restraints. Like
both versions of it makes it seem like he has a personal stake in fighting these people.
Yeah,
he's so powerful, he could just throw them off and fly off.
Yeah,
like he doesn't need to stay and engage with them in a fight. So it doesn't make sense to me. I like that in the Snyder version, he doesn't have a personal thing against Batman per se. Like he does seem to be like you and recognize him, but like they don't do the do you bleed thing. He doesn't have the whole you won't let me live, you won't let me die thing. Like it's less personal, but I also don't like that version because it's like Batman was just completely unprepared for the possibility that this would happen.
Yeah,
like
there was no backup.
He's like
plan.
literally hiding behind a truck, like hold on.
There's no like, okay, bring in Lois now or bring in Martha.
Yeah, she was just there because Martian Manhunter got her to like.
Yeah, it was all Martian Manhunter, and like and Lois in that one said too, like, yeah, for the last time, like, like, holy luck, Batman, like that would have been terrible for the Snyder cut.
This is what I'm saying, like the fact that nobody had a plan, like especially Batman the planner, like I really don't like that.
I hate it.
And I don't like how in the Whedon version it's like, oh, he's got a personal vendetta against Batman, which makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
So like
none whatsoever.
That's what I'm saying. They're both flawed. I don't think it's and I don't think it's a scene that works really. Like I understand the concept behind it, which wouldn't it be cool to watch the League fight Superman, but in AKA both cases,
action figures in front of us. That's
but like in both cases, the whole point is we need him because we can't do this. So like, them fighting him, you're just like, well, they're like, they're not gonna win. It is gonna come down to the lowest thing, which you still can achieve if he just is flying off the handle and like destroying things because he's back And then just like in Man of Steel, his mom showing up or Lois shows up helps center him.
Because it's the Whedon cut where the Flash is making the Pet Cemetery references, right?
Yes.
Of like, yeah, and not in this one. In the Snyder cut, does the League actually go into any kind of exploration of what might happen? Like, would there be any kind of like, oh, this might be a bad idea? I think like Aquaman.
No, but that's why I like the Whedon version better, that they're actually giving you idea, and then it's like Batman is so like sure that this will work because he has the big guns ready to go if it doesn't just go the right way. Like, that is a better thought out thing to me.
I agree. The Whedon Whedon cut is much more successful in that regard, because it's just like, yes, it makes Batman look like a dick. One, we've never been concerned with Batman looking like a dick. He's always looked like a dick. That's his thing. Yeah. Like, he's a dick, but he gets things done, and that's exactly what it is here. So no one should be like, oh, well, maybe he should have explained it fully to the team. I'm like, well, he doesn't even trust anyone. Like, so
exactly,
no, he shouldn't have. Or like in this version, at least it's consistent that he didn't. But the issue with that is just like in the Whedon cut, there is a plan, and it's like, oh, it's understood why you're so gung-ho and pushing for this is because you have a plan that will work out in your mind, and you're just not letting anyone know. But in the Snyder cut, it's just like, guys, everyone's on board, unanimous votes, let's do this. You're right, I hate the lack of moral disagreement there from anyone.
And it's only when Cyborg is like interfacing with the mother box that he sees the future, and he's like, oh no, like this is a bad idea. I think he goes no, and then Flash is like go, and I'm like, oh my god. Like,
and it was something like the ship was having the things. It's like the ship was warning me,
or was like, don't do this. This is a bad idea. But
the ship was telling me not to do this, like all this kind of stuff. But you're right. The only person that intervenes is the ship, which is kind of like speaking to Snyder's, I guess, interpretation of humanity is like, okay, Kryptonians knew that this would be a bad idea, even their AI is going to tell you it's a bad idea. So everyone here that's got a touch of humanity in you, none of you think this is a bad idea. None of you think this is morally or ethically wrong to bring someone back and what the consequences might be, and not even to think about the consequences. Like, that to me is so consistent with an entitled rich billionaire, but it's not consistent with Batman. Because Batman's like, no, we got to have some like contingency plans. He's got a contingency plan for everything. To not have a contingency plan for this is stupid. It's just stupid. We're raising a godlike figure. We don't know what's going to. Necromancy has never been done before, ever. So we don't even know what to expect. Let's do it on a pet rat, for example, and literally do a Pet Cemetery situation first. Nope. Got to do this. Because it's a one shot. If we test it out with anything else, then Steppenwolf comes and we don't have Superman, so we're screwed. So it has to be a one shot deal, and that's what's brutal about it, because they wrote themselves into this position where it has to be done like this.
I don't really care about how they bring him back. I think it's more just silly that he didn't have a backup plan for what would happen if he brought back someone from the dead. I don't.
Oh, that's what I'm complaining about.
And no, I know, but you're getting into like, oh, why didn't they plan to do it on a rat and stuff? I'm like, all of that stuff is just like adding like another hour to the movie.
Yeah, that's my convoluted shit for sure. But I'm just like laying out all the reasons in my head out loud, I suppose, why none of that would work. But it's just it is frustrating that in the Snyder Cut there's no moral objection whatsoever. There's no difference of opinion.
The only objection,
groupthink, and everyone says yes.
The only objection is, hold on, wait. If he comes back, he's gonna lose his shit.
Yep.
Not necessarily.
And that's a brief throwaway dialogue. The Whedon cut, it's consistently
it's to perpetuate the whole nightmare sequence stuff later. Like that's what that was in service to, not any actual like learnings of the characters and what they care about.
Yes.
Speaking of characters, I really feel like I know people make fun of him, but I don't really think that the Snyder cut is an improvement on Aquaman. I feel like when I saw the Whedon version, I was like, yeah, I guess I would watch a movie of just Aquaman.
Yep.
Like, he seemed way more engaging and charismatic in the Whedon cut. In this one, I was just like I liked moments of him in Snyder cut because he was like he cared about Cyborg, but it just seemed like he really felt like a side character You
Well,
didn't feel like someone
yeah.
who could like you could spin off and have like I mean, even like when you see him with Volko in this or Mira, like all of those characters seem like better characters than him,
Mhm.
like characters worth exploring.
Yeah, but I mean that's kind of what you're burdened with in a movie where that one character in particular doesn't want to engage at all with anything.
But what I'm saying
It's
is in
just
the
like,
Whedon cut, it
yeah.
works. Like I'm like, oh, like this is someone with thoughts and opinions. I would watch him
Mhm.
in a solo movie. This one, the Snyder cut, kind of like waters that down.
It does. But then there's like the cyborg moment specifically is so much stronger in the Snyder cut than the Whedon cut
Yeah,
because
it's a great assist from a side character. Like I get it.
yeah,
But what I'm
it's a
saying is
great moment and
what
I
I'm saying
love
is
it
that
so
seems
much.
like a step down in terms of actually building up because the whole idea is
Mhm.
you would want to see these people in their solo movies.
Yes, I get that. I just that specifically that one scene, I feel like Whedon cut versus Snyder cut. The Snyder cut does it better in the sense where
Well,
the
that's just a
Whedon
different
cut
character, yeah.
it is completely a different character. But what the point of the scene is trying to relay is like, hey, we're actually going to try to show that this character actually cares about other people other than himself because the whole movie is like, no, he's like, I don't want to engage with this society, this society, or this society. I'm just going to help people out the way I want to help people out and do
Mhm.
my. Well, I'm just going to do what I do. Like he even says that in the beginning, and he's resistant. He pushes back. So he spends a lot of the movie looking for State to buy into the Justice League. So by the time he's there, okay, yeah, he's definitely a side character. But in the Whedon cut, where he's sitting on the lasso and has that real honest moment, I feel like it works against the character because it's just like it's vulnerable. It's him saying all the things, but because of a mistake. Versus in the Snyder cut, he's just like saying, man, he's really just empathizing with Cyborg. He's like, man, that he's a kid. That accident that already happened to him, and he just lost his dad. There's it's unfair what we're asking of him because of him to do, and then but also realizing there's no other way. Like he's the only one that can do it. It like that moment he does it by himself without the lasso. To me, is so much stronger to his empathy of his character. In that moment of showing us that he does care, as opposed to the Whedon cut where it's just made to me a joke and a throwaway. Like that sucked a lot
Yeah.
to me.
I mean, I don't see them as being analogous, but yeah, I see what you mean. Like because I think you're already in the Whedon version, by the time you see him with Mira, like you get what his deal is. Like he feels put upon, and uh it feels way more vulnerable than the last scene, which I just see as a joke because they already showed his vulnerability when he's talking to Mira about like, yeah, you love her, she took you in, she abandoned me. Like that feel like, and I'm even meaning like the Volko scene, like he just comes off as like standoffish. And so what I'm saying is, yeah, both movies give you a scene. So I like, yeah, the how he deals with Cyborg is better than the lasso scene, but also you get the same kind of idea of like vulnerability from a different scene in the Whedon movie.
Oh, absolutely. And scene to scene, I mean the Whedon cut, where he does the Mira and Falco thing, is so much stronger than the Snyder cut. But in the Snyder cut, the lack of the lasso makes that delivery of that scene just so much more impactful to me. So you're right, like hit per hit, like we're like scene per scene, Aquaman in this situation has better stuff in both. And to cut it all together would be interesting, but inconsistent. But I mean, you're right. Aquaman in this is not the Aquaman that we end up seeing because even in his own movie, he's still dealing with
he's way more like he is in the Whedon cut than he is in the. So I even in that sense, I feel like it's this knowing that you were supposed to see this version in Justice League with Snyder. It also feels like
feels weird.
Yeah, because he's just different in the Aquaman movie. That's if we are comparing both, I do think that it would be better to have the Whedon version, especially since you're going to go on to see him in Aquaman, basically doing the Whedon stuff.
Well, and you're referencing as theatrical meta canon for like in that storytelling format, right? Like
I
the
don't know what you
Whedon
mean.
cut. Like, okay, so both of these can't be canon, despite
Right.
the fact that both of these are dealing with timelines and all that kind of stuff. They can't be canon. One has to be chosen over as canon over the
Mhm.
other. Now, the argument always has to be like, which one do we see as canon? To me, officially, theatrically, and from the studio, it is the Whedon cut. It has to be because they can't acknowledge the Snyder cut. It wasn't released under them, and the fact that it was like the idea that the Snyder cut leaves everyone in a place where it's inconsistent with where the actual studios continued on with those characters. With what Aquaman is left with, you don't understand what happens to Aquaman's personality to get to his solo movie from this, because you're just like, from this he goes directly
When
into
you
that.
say this, you mean Snyder cut?
The Snyder cut, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's one has to be chosen as canon over the other, and the other one has to be an asterisk, like this is what could have been or what should have been or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Either way, this is a situation where it's always going to have an asterisk, and either way, both these movies are going to be in a scenario which, I guess, version did better justice to which character. And with Aquaman, to me, it's so inconsistent because both versions do something very, very, very good, and then the rest of it's inconsistent. Aquaman's the biggest question mark. I feel like neither one does Aquaman.
Well, he's the only one that has a story that happens after this. So yeah. That's why.
Mhm.
So yeah, I didn't really get your question because I think my assumption is I answered it, which is I feel like the Whedon version of him makes the most sense only because if you didn't have Justice League and you only saw Aquaman, and then someone was like, "Hey, did you ever see this?" showing you the Whedon cut, you'd be like, "Well, yeah, I can see how that character is in the movie that is undeniably canon, which is Aquaman."
Yep.
I can see how that is the same like that's the same style of performance, that's the same mentality of the character versus what happens in the Snyder cut.
Well, yeah, we know that Snyder cut is not canon, and we know that because of Aquaman, the Whedon cut has to be canon. But in reference to Aquaman itself, which cut does it better justice to you?
That's what I just said.
Well, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Cyborg, obviously, I have to give the Snyder cut. Batman giving to the Whedon cut.
Yeah, I think for Cyborg, which we haven't got into yet, I just think it's such a as I said when we first watched the Snyder cut, I feel like I was being gaslit. Like everyone's like, "Yeah, see, this is way better." I'm like, it's more of him. But does that mean that you don't understand characters who are black unless you like are rammed down your throat with like extra hours of what like I got the same thing from him in the Whedon cut that I did from the Snyder cut. There's just more of him. Like I understood his conflict in both of them. And in fact, in the Snyder one, there's a bit of a conflict, like a contradiction, because as I said, he says "fuck the world" right after a montage where we see that he obviously sees why he is important in this world to help out, and that he has identified people that are worth helping out. So obviously it's not "fuck the world." Whereas in the Whedon cut, yeah, there's not enough of him. I wish there was more of him in it, but to say that he's completely different is like missing the point. Like he's got the same art, right? Like he's been burdened with this stuff. He even says to his dad, I think it's in I can't remember. I think it's the dad that's like, "Yeah, you got this gift." He's like, "If this is a gift, why am I the one paying for it?" Like a line like that, and the way he delivers it lets you know a lot of stuff about what's going on. Or the fact that, and I think it's in both versions, but like when he's like, "Oh, people aren't," or maybe it is just in the Whedon cut, like people aren't ready to see the monster, and he's like, "It's weird that you thought I was talking about me, like you're the monster, dad." Like he has enough. Like again, would I argue that I would like to see more of the black character? Yes, but to say that he's like completely fleshed out now, I'm like, I don't like. It's the same thing. It's just more of him, which is better, yes, but it's just like it's not like more cohesive now.
Yeah, and I guess you're right, because ultimately we're discussing an issue of quantity versus quality. And I agree with you. We just got more of the same character.
Yeah, it's more of the same. Like I don't feel like
No.
deeper into
Mm.
his stuff.
No, there's more of the stories going on around him. Like I know more about Silas than I do more about Cyborg.
Right,
in
like he
this.
gets like this heroic
Yeah. He gets,
sacrifice and stuff like
yeah, he does something that makes sense and all that kind of stuff. Versus in the Whedon cut, it just seems like oh, it's a consequence. Sorry, had to happen. There's a lot here, and then
well, he
I
doesn't even
can't-
die in the Whedon cut. He's alive to like give us the
Yeah.
version of Cyborg that we know, like with the C on his chest and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, huge change there. But yeah, I feel like there's more stuff that happens to the people around Cyborg and Cyborg's story.
Yeah, like you find
in
out
the
why
Snyder
his
Cut.
mom's not around. I mean,
Yeah.
again, in the Whedon cut, he specifically says, "I lost my wife in that car crash. Like we both lost stuff." So you know it was a car crash.
Yeah.
To see the football game beforehand doesn't really
Doesn't add
give
anything
me
to me
more.
than
Like I
visuals.
still understand, like, or the fact that he doesn't see his dad in the stands. Like, sure, but like I think that
But I think like
the
people
way his dad treated him after the accident trumps any kind of resentment he felt for him before the accident. So like
Yeah.
again, I don't feel like it's deeper. It's more just like, oh yeah, he didn't like his
No.
dad before the accident too.
Yeah, it's not deeper. It's just different versions of things that he's also good at, right? It's setting up the whole like, oh yeah, and I guess I don't know maybe it might be culturally different to Americans than us or football fans in general to be like, look how like to because that sequence in itself, like me being a semi-casual, and when I say semi-casual, I'm on the lower end of casual
Mhm.
football fan. I would watch and play fantasy football, which is hilarious. Because I don't consider fantasy football people casual fans, even though I do 100% consider myself a casual fan that plays fantasy football. That football sequence and that scene is like it shows off the talent that you're like, whoa, that is ridiculous. Like if that happened in real life, there's no way that would not end up on a highlight reel. We would be seeing that all year. You know what I mean? On ESPN or TSN or whatever. We'd be seeing that all year. So I'm like, yeah, that's phenomenal. And it does set up like how great he was. And it does like give us a bigger kind of distance between like what he lost. Like, yeah, you could be a football star that's adored by fans and the population and all that kind of stuff. And now you're a situation where and the contrast of like, okay, you're loved by society, but your dad wasn't there. Now that your dad's here and the only one that's interacting with you, society isn't. It's like, okay, that mirroring is cool, but at the same time, it's not different. We're being told the exact same thing in the Whedon cut. We're just seeing it in the Snyder cut. It's the same thing. We're just seeing more of it. That's all. I mean, I like the scene of him being driven home by his mom after the game because I'm like, it makes you remember. It's like, yeah, no, he's not this fully fleshed out character. He's not this fully fleshed out grown adult the way Batman is. He's very much still going through like, I guess for second, third year university in a varsity team or whatever. Oh no, wait, he's playing professional. Gotham City.
He's at Gotham City University.
Yeah, university, right? Okay, so he's like in that age. I'm like, man, that's 22?
No, he still has to be in university. So
yeah. So I'm
you
like,
you wouldn't be 23. I mean, you could be, but
you could be, but it does do a good job of like, oh yeah, he is actually like a kid. Because that's very like the way he acts in the car is he's still very, very kid-like, even though he's like, you know, a grown person, he's very kid-like in that situation, right? It does more there, but
I think
it's more of the same.
Why I don't think it does more is that doesn't factor into how he operates as Cyborg.
You're right, it doesn't.
It
It's just like that is dead.
You don't get the sense he's a kid trying to like tackle all of these like new things. It's just the very overwhelming thing of I was dead, I was brought back to life, and my dad considers me this shame. I lost my mom. Like that's what factored in. Like he could be Batman. Like none of that. He was young and cut short factors into this. Realistically,
no, it doesn't. It's the exact same thing as the Whedon versus here. It's just that There's more of it here. It's not different. It's just more.
Mhm.
More's not necessarily better. More is appreciated because you're like,
appreciate it.
okay, I still appreciate the fact that we're getting more of a character that represents diversity, and there's very, very heartbreaking story.
Yeah.
But more is not better, and that needs to be distinguished.
One character who does not show up in the Whedon cut at all is Ryan Choi, the
Yes.
Atom, which
Mhm.
I found myself liking him a lot more this watch. Especially
agree.
when he was like, "This is the hottest thing on earth." That's what I told my prom date. I'm like, "That's I
It's
like that kind of like office humor."
Mhm. I agree with you because I connected with that character a lot more from the in the sense where I'm like, I get it, man. You're an Asian male. You would make that kind of joke, and that is a very like that is something that would connect with me. That's something like if I was a lab tech, I would say it's like, yeah, that's the hottest thing on earth, which is what I said to this person. She didn't. She
Mhm.
left me. She disagreed.
Yeah,
I would make those
liked
jokes
him.
at self-depreciating humor, and I liked it. And I liked the fact that they gave him a distinctly Asian accent without making a joke out of it. I
Right.
appreciated
I'm
that
hoping
a
that's just
lot.
the actor's natural English accent.
Right. But either way, it made it onto screen. But
Well, that's what I'm
it was
saying. I'm
just
hoping that
yeah,
it was
yeah.
like what I'm getting at is like people like Aziz Ansari rightfully are like, no, you're not going to get me to do an accent so that I can be
Yeah,
so I can read more South Asian.
correct.
I'm that's what I'm saying. I'm hoping that that
Mhm.
actor just has that accent and they let him do that instead of being like, can you play it more Asian, please? That's
Or
what
it
I'm
was
saying.
his acting choice to be like, "Hey, I'm the Atom, and this is an Asian male character, and this is a big
Sure,
deal."
if it was his choice.
And if it was his choice,
Yeah.
then sure. But I'm like, that's a very, very good point that I never really considered. But I'm just like in the perspective of it wasn't comical to me. Usually it
No,
is.
I think we're
Yeah,
saying two different things, but they're
we
both
are.
important. That
We are saying two
that
different things.
he is not being played for laughs and with that
Yeah.
accent, which is a
Mhm.
very important point. And I'm saying I'm hoping that in addition to that, that was either his choice or that is
His
just how he speaks when he
natural
speaks
speaking
English,
cadence.
and
Yeah.
that wasn't like pressure so that he could so they could fill their quota of having an Asian character.
Yeah, or like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I
Yeah.
agree with that. Now that you introduced that thought into my mind, it makes me question whether or not that actor did have to deal with that. Because even if the actor did, at this point in time, they're not likely to speak up about it. And
No.
have probably moved
Unfortunately.
on.
And
Yeah,
it did
very
seem like
unfortunately.
I remember leading up to the movie, they said, "Oh, the Atom is in Justice League," and
Mhm.
technically, yes, the Atom is in the Snyder cut. But
Mhm.
obviously, for me, like he was being set up to have his own stuff too, and I'm hoping that
Mhm.
they honor that. And so, I mean, I'm assuming it won't be with that actor,
They
but like,
won't.
I hope they
won't.
honor that because, yeah, like that's just that's diversifying the people you see as superheroes, and
I so here's the thing. I agree with that, and I want it. Don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't, but it's DC has shown us that they're not ready to handle a lot of different things, even within the core principles of storytelling. To integrate that side of it, I'd rather not see it right now because to me, and I'm not going to get tied up talking too much about this, but the next biggest thing on the horizon, because we're recording this podcast before Shang-Chi comes out, and that to me is like the biggest anxiety producing moment for me to critically review ever in this podcast's history because it had so much personal attachment to it. Now, in this situation where they're like, okay, let's tell an Asian male story through the Atom, and that has me excited because it doesn't have the shtick of kung fu and it doesn't have the shtick of let's do food dogs and dragons, but it
you're
has
talking about the Atom now, right?
yeah, I'm talking about the Atom.
So, yeah.
But it has a shtick of like still a scientist that is. I don't know how they're going to play up whether or not his sexuality is going to be or an aspect of it because and don't say like don't pretend like oh like don't say like why does that have to be important. I'm like, well, it's important with Superman, it's important with literally every other character that you show off their sex appeal. I mean, arguably the Flash hasn't had that moment, but every other character is like, look how hot this person is, especially in a Zack Snyder film. where we know he's obsessed with the human body for for him to be involved with this character and all this kind of stuff. It's just like all I will see with that character is just not the same level of either attention or expectation or whatever that they're bringing on the screen, and that is what's going to be disappointing to me. So I just don't want to see it yet because they're not ready to do a good job with it. That's how I feel.
Okay. I would still like to see it. I think you to expect someone to knock it out of the park on the first try. I think we see that we as people of color don't get that opportunity. So it needs to be a bunch of bunts until you go. I think to keep holding back on it. But I'm not trying to convince you to. No, I'm saying another point of view is that I would love to see that and to be normalized as opposed to being like, well, we can't do it if it's not going to be perfect. And when I say perfect, I'm talking about to our standards, not to the white gaze standards. What I'm talking about is, clarify, you're gonna have Blade, you're gonna have a Blade, you're gonna have a Spawn until you actually get to something meaningful like a Black Panther.
Very good point. What you're gonna actually to clarify, because I think phonetically you said it a little bit. So when he said gaze, my assumption is GAZE.
Yeah, that's just a term. You don't have to qualify.
No, because to the
white gaze is a term, or male gaze.
When you said white gaze, I was like, okay, you're not talking about the white LGBTQ population. You're talking about the white gaze, as in what white people view and all that kind of stuff, and their perception and what people of color should be. Which is why, like, the sexuality comment is important, because it's like, well, because white people don't see Asians as a sexually, I guess, active, unless it's like hypersexualization of the female body, female Asians, which is like, okay, so asexual males hypersexualized females. That's how the Asian society exists, and that's how we got to a population crisis with asexual males and hypersexualized females. Think about that portrayal for a little bit. It's stupid. But I'm not saying make it perfect, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just cringing at this point because we've had, there should be the Black Panther moment for the Asian population and community. We're far away from that, and there's been so many attempts at it so far that I've seen that I'm just like, I just don't know if we're ever going to get there.
I can't even think of those attempts.
Crazy Rich Asians.
That's not the same thing. I'm talking about superhero movies. That's
superhero stuff.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Yeah. There's nothing there, but I mean,
and again, that was something. And Crazy Rich Asians isn't the same thing, because that was them being like, let's take a wild swing, as opposed to let's just try and normalize having Asian people as leads. But I feel like we're not talking about Justice League enough.
We're not. I'm getting off an Asian tangent for sure. Yeah. My apologies.
You don't have to apologize. I just think we will definitely have those conversations as more Asian-led, at least for the purposes of this podcast, superhero movies come out.
Yeah, and Asian characters make it on screen or whatever. Yeah. Question mark Namor and
well, that's going to be a Mexican. Namor is being played by.
Oh, that's confirmed. I did not know that. Okay.
It's not confirmed. It's like
heavily rumored.
Heavily rumored. Yeah,
I see.
So
the Woj report for actors. Yeah. All right, but yeah, we will see how it goes. Listen to our Shang-Chi episode for that thought played out in its entirety. But back to Justice League.
Yeah. I like the inclusion of Ryan Choi. As I said, I'd like to see more of him. But I don't really. Yeah, I feel the same way about Wonder Woman. Both Justice League versions don't do her a lot of justice.
No, at least in the Whedon cut, it's more of a intellectually thought out character. Because I do like the Whedon cut. It's like, yes, I do want someone to morally object against this idea.
I think that's a good thing for her. That she pushes back, and she's not. She has her own opinion on it. I like that.
I like the Whedon cut version of her a bit more because of that.
And the Flash,
the Flash is the same character in both movies to me.
He's the same.
He's just more sure. He's just more confident in the Snyder cut than he is in
Right. He doesn't have the
Whedon
human
cut.
moment of I don't know what I'm doing. I just push people and run,
Yeah, and he's
which I
always
think was a good beat to have.
yeah, and he's always like every single time they do something, he's like, "Hey, I'm not supposed to do this, but I have this ability to do this," and he's just like constantly like, "Hey, I have this option. I have this option in the Snyder cut versus like in the Whedon cut. It's more like he's got to be kind of that moment of be coached of what to do. He's like, "Hey, I've never done I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that moment. I've never done battle. I've just pushed a few guys or something like that." Like you guys are hardcore. I'm like, this is my first time doing something like that. I love that moment. That's
And I
great.
get you can't have that if he knows how to do time or like to reverse time, then you can't have that moment thing.
Yeah.
I just don't like the reversing time thing.
They used the beat twice, and I don't like
he
it.
reverses time to touch the mother box at the right time, and then he reverses time so that they don't all die. But I'm just like,
yeah. Again, it's just
I don't
more
really
of
like
the same
that. And
thing.
he's like, it's not more of the same thing. It's just this weird new thing that he's doing that I would have thought you would say for Flashpoint. Like,
true, very
it's
true.
like, shouldn't things now
Very
be different
true.
that you've reversed time twice? Like,
yeah,
very and also
true.
like,
good point.
And like when he's talking himself through reversing time, I'm like, what is like this is nothing. What is this means nothing. He's never talked like this before. He's not talking to anybody. But it's all lines that seem like it's like a callback. Like he's saying it like as if someone told him this before, and now he's finally realizing what they mean. And I'm like, this is stupid. I know that people think it's such a beautiful moment, but I'm just
it's not. It's
I don't
stupid.
like this. This
you
is
know
stupid.
you know what it is to me, and this is why it's like just Zack Snyder playing with action figures. It's like, okay, that moment genuinely belongs in a Green Lantern situation. Because in that situation,
in the Flashpoint movie where he actually like, though any of that means anything because someone told him it.
Yeah, or he's repeating something his mom said since birth or something like that, or like having that connection. You're absolutely right. There's no like every time the whole time he was doing that, I'm just like, why did he decide this is a good idea? Because it holds no actual connection. It's like, is it a beautiful moment? If it means nothing, you're just it's like looking just at a rose and not saying that a rose isn't beautiful, but it's just it elicits that emotion, and that emotion alone is like, oh, look at that pretty rose. Unless it has like, oh, I grew roses with my mom as a kid or something like that, unless you have that deep connection. But this is a situation where they're trying to give this character that deep connection to something that we didn't play out yet. And I'm like, what the hell, this is stupid. Or at least like say something like, I like that he does connect it back to his dad. It's like he says something about his dad, but then the rest of it's so convoluted and jumbled.
Just know that your kid was one of the best, meaning like he's finally ascended to god status. We did it. We got one more character to be a god and not really associate with humans.
And then he's just like, hey, and I want, like, I'm doing this for you, dad, too. And that's very superficial. That it just because
he's doing it for himself.
He's doing it for himself. He's saying like, I'm doing it for you. Like he's like, I made this first $1 billion for you, dad, Jeff. Like, and that's
I'm saying I don't think the intention is that you feel he's doing it for his dad. I think he's doing it to make himself feel better, and it's something his dad can be proud of, but it isn't like
maybe it was one of those things
the thing
where
he does for his
dad. I can only run to that level if I hype myself up, and this is how I'm going to hype myself up. And we're just like, we get that part of it, but then the stuff you're saying, we should have more connection to it. Like, it should be throwbacks to the connections he had to the characters, to the people, to the Justice League, and his dad. Like, if anything,
well, the thing he does for his dad is get the job at the criminal thing, and like that's showing that like he's not. Like he's got his foot in the door type thing. That seemed like more of like this is actions I'm taking to help you in particular.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. He's just like, hey, here's to show you, dad, that's stuck in jail, that you're basically, you can be proud of my life as entertainment in jail. That there you go. You're going somewhere. And the idea is that we're moving towards finding evidence to absolve you from your being accused of my mom's murder, which we both did not. No, we both know is not true.
Yeah,
I get that, but it's not like the dad is like, "Oh, great, now you'll be able to work on this and like officially work on my case." Well, he's happy for Barry, but not happy for the reasons. Like, now you'll be able to work on my case and get me out of here. He's just like, no,
Oh, that would be a weird thing to say.
That's a weird thing to say.
I don't think that it's on the dad to say that. No,
it would not be. But that's why we know Barry is doing this, because he wants to have that personal stake in getting his dad out of jail, which is good.
Yeah. Well, is that it? I don't have it. Do you have anything else to say about
I feel like we have talked about this movie to death.
Yeah.
I at this point in time, I've struggled with, I was having a hard time falling asleep last night thinking over this question, is how are we going to, like, at the end of every podcast, we usually rate movies on our 10-point scale for whatever. In this one, we're purposefully putting these movies head to head. So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna say, like, which one do we prefer? Or
I think I think everyone knows we prefer the Snyder Cut. Like, it's not. I think you were saying that you just needed to know if you were going to appreciate the Snyder Cut more after watching them that close together.
Oh yeah. I do appreciate the Snyder Cut more, much more.
Whereas I do not. I think I was right about every criticism I had about it the first time, and I found more stuff to criticize. But I'm happy for people that really like it.
Yeah, I like it more, but that's not to say much more than, because what was the original rating I gave it? I can't remember.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, I'm not going to.
People will have to listen to it.
People have to.
We're not giving ratings this
time.
Do
deep cuts. Tweet us out if you know that and you're a big fan of the show. Tweet us out and be like, "Yo, you gave it an 8.5. So does that mean it's a 9 now?" And if that's a situation, I'm willing to add 0.5 onto my original rating. That is what I'm willing to do. Unless it was the original rating was 9.5. I'm not giving a Snyder Cut a 10. I'm not giving Snyder a 10. I'm not giving him that satisfaction.
Why not?
Because it just didn't deserve it, in the sense where he doesn't know the character.
If you were at a 9.5 and you're giving it 0.5, obviously you really liked it and now you found more to like about it.
Yeah,
so it doesn't make sense to say you're not giving it a 10.
But then to say that it's a perfect movie when it's clearly not a perfect movie.
I don't like when people say stuff like
egregious.
That. How did you feel about it? Did you feel a 10 out of 10 out of it? Like, no. When people are like, I don't give 10s because it's not perfect. Like,
it's not okay. No, I give 10s.
There's
when
no
they are
point
perfect.
in rating.
I give 10s when they are perfect, but Snyder's not perfect. And the Snyder Cut.
But now you're making it about him and not the product that he put.
Okay, but the product itself is not perfect.
Okay.
I
just wanted to be clear on that, because if you keep saying Snyder's not perfect, it's like, well,
none of us.
You're making it a personal thing now.
I'm not making it personal. Yeah. I am just pointing out the conclusions that we've come to for Snyder professionally. But what I am saying is that this movie is not a perfect 10. And if my original rating was a 9.5, then I'm not adding anything on. I'm staying at 9.5. But if it was anything lower than 9.5, I'm willing to give it 0.5 more based on my original rating, which I do not know.
It's weird, but okay. I can't.
I can't say it's a perfect movie. There's so many things about the Snyder Cut. And to me, I'm like, can we even call this a movie? From the perspective of, yes, but you're given so much leeway, the runtime and all that kind of stuff, in the same way that, like, the Lord of the Rings director's cut is a special consideration. We can't call that. Can that be considered a movie? Can these extra long deep cuts be considered movies to you?
Yep.
Okay, then. 100%. Well, then, fair enough.
Yep.
Especially, it's just weird the way he did it, because I'm like, oh right, I forgot about the episodic thing that he tried to do, where it's like part 1, part 2, part 6, and epilogue.
It doesn't really matter. The same thing with Quentin Tarantino movies. They're broken into chapters.
True. I will say that I prefer your take on this. That this is a 3.5-hour movie with a 30-minute, whatever you want to call the epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
I like that take of it much more. It's much more easy for me to process, because once I put the epilogue in, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Because it's setting up.
I did not like sitting through that again.
It's setting up stuff that's never going to happen. So that's what the problem is with the factoring the epilogue. We could reasonably be like, okay, let's say the studio takes the Snyder Cut into consideration, says it's canon now over the Whedon Cut. It cannot take the epilogue into consideration unless they're willing to play that part out of it, and they're not going to.
I don't understand. Sorry, I don't.
You know, well, because they're building a future of the DCEU without that epilogue stuff, right? Or, well, I guess they haven't yet because they haven't really used any of those characters that are essential to it.
This is my confusion with what you're saying.
Okay,
Anything is possible.
No, you're right. I talked myself out of that. I just
Yeah.
talked myself out of it. Never mind.
It-
Never mind.
There might be different actors, but they could still continue on with these
True.
storylines.
Because I just remembered, like, Mara's not dead in the Snyder Cut or anything like that or
Nope.
whatever. Only Silas is dead.
Mhm.
It's not like we have a Cyborg movie that contradicts that yet.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair.
I think it's the same. I think that it is a better movie, the Snyder Cut, but it's not good. I don't actually think it's good.
Okay, this is the best way to say it. It's a turd with more polishing. Not that
Sure. I think the difference is one was made just to like make sure that they had it, and
Yeah.
another one was, especially when you take into consideration how it was released, one was made with love. So
one was
that will always make it
a better product.
better. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't just mean because I know it's I mean that it's very clear based on what you see on the screen
Mhm.
that more care was taken into it. Was that energy put into stuff that maybe shouldn't have happened? Sure, but it's there, and it is undoubtedly better than the Whedon Cut.
Undoubtedly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network, which means we're on a network with great shows like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, a whole bunch of things. So please head on over there, check those shows out, check us out. If you want to hear older episodes from us, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, whole bunch of places. So please go there, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends or anyone that ever is like, hey, do you like the podcast? You can be like, yeah, I do. This one in particular. And that would be great. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.